Hey guys, David Robinson here. Welcome to the Apartment Investing Journey. Another great episode for you today, and a guest that I've been excited to have on for quite some time now. This is an individual that has an incredible story that maybe is a little unique for most of us. That being said, I think there'll be aspects of it that we'll be able to take away and apply to our own businesses. And so, Reed Goossens, thank you for coming on the show today. I appreciate you coming on.
David, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so Reed has a unique story. He quit his job in Australia in 2012 and moved halfway across the globe to the U.S. to change his life and chase a dream. He had limited funds, no investing experience, and no credit. And Reed went from purchasing a small duplex to growing his own real estate investing firm, Wildhorn Capital. Reed now syndicates large multi-million-dollar deals across the U.S. He has also achieved financial freedom himself and taken complete control of his life. So, Reed, that's a great bio that's just packed full of exciting process and journey, and that's what our show is all about. So, let's back up and let's talk about this journey that you've been on since 2012, and we can just go from there.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sure some of your listeners may have heard it, may have not have heard it. I've definitely been around the podcasting scene talking about the journey. But just to preface that, the whole purpose of me trying to share this story with people is not to boast. It's really to inspire. And I think that's trying to come from a genuine point of view, down to earth. Hopefully people can hear that across the airwaves today. But yeah, look, it started just with the curiosity to live in the United States. I actually had come through the US back earlier than 2012. I came backpacking through the United States as after university, you go backpacking around the world. Most Australians do, at least. And I fell in love with New York City in about 2009, 2010. And at the time, I'd already met a pretty incredible American girl. And so started falling in love with both New York City and this American girl. And then I moved back to Australia in early 2010. And it was a couple of years later, then I finally got my act together and decided to move halfway across the world. And it was really just to scratch an itch. I wanted to push myself. I wanted to be an expat in New York City. And the goal was really just to go for a couple of years and move back. Continue to be a civil engineer. It wasn't, I never had any ideas that I would go on to build what I've built today. But it's definitely been an incredible journey and something that if I look back on in life, the whole purpose I went down this path was to, because I was driven by the fear of regret. Like, I'd hate to wake up when I'm 70 years of age and go, geez, I wish I'd moved to the United States in 2012. But I had no idea that sitting here nearly 10 years later, that I'd be talking to you about, building multifamily investments, and big portfolios. And I didn't come to this country with that in mind, and at least in the beginning.
Well, that's interesting. Let's talk about a couple of things there. First off, you moved here to become it sounds like you were a civil engineer. That
Correct.
was your education. You came here, I assume, to work in that profession, and then all of a sudden, here you are, building a very substantial real estate investment firm. So, talk to us about what that process was like and how you got introduced into the real estate world.
Well, so the process for real estate investing really started actually before moving to the United States. And it was coming back from being abroad for 2 years. And I went abroad in 2008, 2009, was, had fallen in love, all that sort of stuff, gallivanted around the south of France. I'd, crossed the Atlantic Ocean on a super yacht. Like, I'd had all these incredible life-changing experiences. And I'm sitting back in my cubicle back in Australia, back at an engineering job, and just going, geez, I want someone to pay me to live my life, right? I wanted to live my life on my terms. And through that curiosity, it was all about discovering what I could do next. And I didn't know what entrepreneurship meant. I didn't know what real estate was. I knew what real estate investing was, but I didn't know what to do with it. And it was through the book Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2000, reading that in early 2010, really stoked the fire or the spark within me to go out and learn more, right? To educate myself about this passive income. What does that mean? And really, again, going back to the premise, I don't want to work for someone. I knew that probably early on in my career that I wasn't ever going to be a great employee because I just felt like a small cog in a massive machine. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this show, sitting at desks, sitting at cubicles, wanting to break out of that lifestyle. And so for me, even though I didn't know what entrepreneurship was, even though I didn't know I was going to go down the path of real estate investing, I knew that at some stage I wanted to be my own boss if I really, really look back on it in hindsight 2020. So the journey actually started in Australia. And through that, I realized pretty quickly that, hey, I'm an engineer. I'm surrounded by developers. I'm surrounded by guys who are building stuff. Maybe I should pay more attention, even if I don't like the job. You know what I mean? So the lesson there is, as you grow, and I'll fast forward a little bit, but I'll say that it took me 8 years to leave the corporate world. But between leaving, between reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and leaving. And so I just put that in context for people that when you are in a job that maybe you don't necessarily like, but what are the skill sets you can take from that to help be a stepping stone to where you want to go? And for me, it happened to be that I was an engineer and I was already really good at math and, all that sort of stuff, or Excel spreadsheets. I just needed to get the education piece of the real estate investing. That's when I started to attend, luckily, one of the only real estate investment clubs in Australia happened to be in my local town of Brisbane. And so I started going there. I remember going to the Broncos Leagues Club, and there was like 8 people and just learning about fixing and flipping and lease options and all this sort of stuff. And I had picked up, I just had, was just hungry to learn more. But then came the opportunity to move to America, and I'd saved up a bunch of money, and I'd been self-educating at that point for about 2 years at that time. But I really wanted to live in the United States. I really wanted to be an expat again, live in New York City, not just be a tourist, but be a local, right? And then I was going to chase this girl. And so there I was. I said, screw it. I could buy a house here in Australia and try and flip it, or I'm going to move halfway across the world. And I chose the latter. And, the rest is history, as they say.
Well, that's okay. So we've got to break down a couple things here. First of all, you're fairly young at this stage, and you have a lot of ambition. You have a burning desire to have financial freedom in your life. Maybe you didn't know what that looked like or how you were going to get there, but that was incredibly important to you. I'm curious about if you had any family or mentors or anybody in your life that sort of gave that to you, or if that was just innate inside of you. And well, let's start there. Was there anybody in your life that you looked to as a mentor that sort of guided this path for you?
No, I wouldn't say as guided the path, but a lot of credit's got to go to my parents. They allowed me to be curious, I think is probably the right word. Allowed me to, always, my dad would always say to me, a fool and their money are easily parted. Now he was just a high school teacher, but he was quite frugal with his money, and he invested in real estate in Australia. And for a pretty middle of the road type of income, he was able to grow some wealth through buying strategic houses. Now, I didn't know that at the time. I observed it at the time subconsciously because I was obviously present, but I didn't know that was the path towards financial freedom. But I sort of at the beginning, when I was choosing, okay, what am I going to go down? I'm going to go, could I invest in stocks? Could I invest in businesses? Could I invest in real estate? And I was like, oh, well, engineer and dad seemed to have a good, all right go at it. Yeah. Being a high school teacher, let's have a go at real estate. And that was probably just putting 1 and 2 together. And then back to, the mentor, it was, again, my parents just always instilling in me the value of hard work, the value of